and this book is not because we are distributing this book in French, but it is really very well done. You can learn a lot by reading this book, because it has been made by the people themselves, the one who were really, who had the hands in the engine, I would say. Another major problem was snowy, but snowy is really the key, because at the beginning, when Steven Spielberg wants to make the movie, he was thinking about a live movie. So the original contract, was made and signed on the basis of a live movie. Of course, it's a big difference between a live movie and a computerized generated film. One of the main consequences is, of course, the merchandising, because the merchandising of a live movie is totally and completely different from the merchandising from the film we have today. Today, there is no clearly two worlds in a way. The classic Tintin, the one we are still taking care of, and the one which will be licensed by Paramount and the studios under, of course, I wouldn't say the control, but they consult us on each merchandising. But clearly, sometimes it's difficult in a way to differentiate the merchandising, and we have to work on the differentiation just to be sure that we don't mix the two worlds. And according to Weta, and that's something I discovered myself, Hergé was cheating the scale and the proportion throughout the books of his character. And for Milou, for example, clearly he's using Milou in a three-quarter position. So its expression work within the panel, and that technique that Hergé was using clearly annoy a lot Weta for the movie, because it's impossible to play like this in the films, since the camera is moving around the places. So it was again a big challenge to solve this, and also to keep this identity of the album in the three-dimensional environment. And another problem was the skin, or we call the four of Milou, and it was so problematic that at a certain time, and I would say it was in May or in March, they were calling a specialist from the MIT to solve this problem of Milou, to represent correctly the four on the screen. For Haddock, one of the most important work for Haddock is Serkis. Serkis is really a magician. He's probably one of the best in performance capture, because he had this experience with Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. He is so good in that I think he has created his own school also in movement capture. And one main focus of Haddock was, of course, the expression of Haddock, and so they have worked a lot on this. That's Thompson and Thompson. You have on your right the pictures of the flea market. So this flea market, that's the place where it's in the center of Brussels. It still is all known by the Belgian, of course. It's still running, And this flea market was, of course, the main scene from the beginning of the movie. And I think they have reproduced quite well the ambience of this flea market, although, of course, at the time of Hergé, it was quite different from now. But they have reproduced quite well the ambience of this market in the movie. But they have a little bit Europeanized, or let's say you can feel sometimes even more in France than in Belgium sometimes when you are on this flea market. But still you can recognize some settings which are there in the flea markets. Here you have pictures. So when Weta start working on the material, they have asked to all their team to choose and select one panel or one drawing they want to do in the album, whatever the album was. So in this book, which is a book of 200 pages, more or less, you can see scenery from the moon, for example, because one of the creative guy selected the moon because that's the album that he prefer, and he select a panel and he paint this panel, and you can have this kind of work just to see how the team was reacting vis-à-vis the materials of Hergé, and starting really thinking and engineering the movie. I think it was really clever to do that. So the famous apartment of Tintin, just to explain the story, Tintin is living in Rue de Labrador, number 26. Rue de Labrador doesn't exist in Brussels, but you have a street not far away from the flea market, which is called Terre-Neuve. And I think Hergé was playing with the words, because Labrador and Terre-Neuve in French means two types of dogs, or also can mean two types of province of Quebec. So I think that's maybe one of the explanations why he called the street of Tintin Rue du Labrador. So again, here on your right, you can see, because that's really a painting made by one of the creative guy of Weta before really starting working on computer. That's the plane. So maybe you know that, but the film of Spielberg is also based on the crab with the golden claws. So they select those albums because by essence, one of the major characters is Captain Haddock, and we need to introduce in the movie Captain Haddock, and Steven Spielberg and his team were obliged to make a reference to the crab with the golden claws, just to introduce Captain Haddock, and he did it really in a clever way again. I think that's it. Yeah, there is no more pages. And I just want to say a word about Sakharine. Sakharine is the bad guy in the movie. In the album, he's not really the bad guy, but again, Steven Spielberg and his team were clever enough to recreate a kind of a bad guy, and to make the link between Sakharine and Red Rackham, because basically by essence Sakharine is one of the descendants of Red Rackham, and I think it was really clever to do that. And Peter Jackson, they face again a problem with Sakharine. They want to create, since Sakharine didn't play a major role in the album, they have to recreate a kind of character and a role in the movie. And instead of having a really bad guy, they try to have a very intelligent bad guy, and I would say shrewd in English, which is in French subtil, and also for his physical appearance. They of course work on the existing panel of Hergé, but they take another model for which Hergé was never thinking about it, which is called Rasputin, and they use the face of Rasputin and the panel of Hergé, and again they made a very interesting mixture to create this character. And they use also for his appearance what they call the scattergun technique. So they, instead of proposing to Steven Spielberg one or two options for this character, they put, I wouldn't say hundreds of options to him, and with some slight and clerical details, for example, the beard, the glasses, the hairs, and they were changing all the time some details, and they present 100 faces to Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, who finally selected the character that you can see on the movie. So, and I will finish my presentation with two words and two quotations of Steven Spielberg himself. He said that when he was doing this movie about Tintin, and when he was taking, when he was filming, he was filming with two eyes and not one, like we did in the past. So I think it was a very interesting quotation for him to say that with Tintin, it's really the first time that he was filming with two eyes. And he also considered himself in this movie more as a painter than as a filmmaker. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Pedro, and I have two questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So the first one I would like to ask about now this new film, because I was with my friends earlier before we came here. They already watched the film at 3:30. I'm going to watch it now at 9:30, and. So we were discussing a few things about 3D cinema, and I was a bit interested about your opinion on that, because I'm of the opinion, well, first of all, I understand that probably at the beginning when Hergé, for example, wrote the Tintin in the land of the Russians, probably the aim, or the aim public, the main public was probably, I don't know, teenagers, young adults, because of the ideology. But with time, obviously, it went much more family-oriented, Tintin, yes?
Yeah.
And now with the 3D cinema, I don't use glasses, but when I go to the 3D cinema, I have to wear these glasses. I feel like I'm watching the film alone, because my eyes, they are obstructed to the side. So usually when I go to the cinema with a friend without the 3D, I'm like, I'm looking at the screen, and then if I want to comment something during the film, I can do like this and see, oh, did you see that? And at the corner of my eye, I can see my friend. Now with the 3D glass, I can't do that. So I feel it's a bit like an individual experience. And being the film, I suppose that Spielberg had the idea or knew that he was going to do something family-oriented, right? And so is there any concern about this, that a family goes to watch the film and has this obstacle at the corner of their eyes, and so people are like this if they want to comment, and if they do like this, so that they're not going to be paying attention to the film, actually? Yeah?
It's a good point, but I remember when I was young, when I was to go to the movie, I was with my mother because my father and my stepfather didn't like to go to the movie. So we were together to the movie, and we were always annoyed by people who were speaking to the other in front of me. So it's a good news that what you are saying, but because basically the people will be more silent and they will
Well, yes,
they
but
will
I'm
look
not
to the movie.
You know, I'm not
in a concentrate way.
Yes, but I'm not like in the
No,
theater with the microphone and say, "Hey, did you see just that?" You know, so people are not actually listening. I'm just like, "Oh, you know, look at that."
Yeah, I cannot. I think you are right. You share less experience with maybe the audience with the glasses. That's. I
Right, no, I was just
that's
wondering.
That's common sense. Yes.
Yes, I just was wondering if that did occur to.
But that's why you have a 2D version as well, and I'm pretty sure when I saw the reaction today, this afternoon, with the children, it was really interesting to experiment that. A number of children were not wearing glasses. I just noticed that at the end of the movie, so I'm not sure for how long they have just dropped the glasses, but a number of them, I wouldn't say the majority, but a number of them dropped the glasses. So clearly you have a good question, and I know that in the press as well, the 3D is I wouldn't say criticized, but there is a lot of discussion today in the press about the 3D technology.
Yes, well, I thought so. So that's why I thought perhaps this question would have been aroused by.
But you are right. In a way, you will go to the movie with a less sharing experience, because when you have glasses, you cannot see your neighbor. You are very well
and actually
concentrate
at
on the
home
screen.
as well, right? Because okay, if at the theater you can't do much noise because there's other people watching the film as well, at home you can do all the noise you like. But if you use the glasses with 3D television, yet again it's going to be a very individual experience.
But you have to know also that today there are some technology of 3D without glasses.
Yeah, yes, true. Yes.
Basically, if I remember correctly, you have 3 types of glasses. One among others with laser. So you need a different type of screen than the one we have today in the cultural center. And in fact, the glasses are interacting with the screen. That's based on a kind of laser or ultra red line technology. But today, for example, computer and for TV, you have technology of 3D without glasses.
Yeah, sure.
So on your TV or on your computer, you have a camera which detects you, and when you move, the camera is following you in a way, but you have to be in the central axe, and then you can see the movie without glasses in 3D. So, and this technology is really interesting. I would say the only problem for a big movie theater, you face a challenge with the line of the viewer, because they need to be central to.
Yes.
To be located in a central way with the screen.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. One more question, if you don't mind. Okay. I'm sure you're being asked about this lots of times. So it's probably just going to be one more time. But I'm curious because I never heard the answer. You mentioned a few things before, because I know that Hergé was accused of being racist because of the first, especially Tintin in Congo. And but as you referred before, that the DNA for Tintin was the Boy Scout thing.
Values, yeah.
Yes. So I actually, I started to think about it again, and there's especially one scene that I remember very well, which is when the train came against the car, and it's just,
That's a brilliant example you are giving.
Yes, so you know what's coming, right? So Tintin is actually standing there, and Yves Milou was trying to righten things up, and the African people weren't, and he started to shouting, which didn't seem very Boy Scoutish to me, that you referred to. So how do you interpret this, or how do you feel about this? What's your opinion?
For Tintin in Congo, it's funny that you gave that example, and I know why you gave that example, because in the speech balloon, I think Milou was treating the black as lazy people or something like that.
Tintin, actually.
Yeah. Oh, Tintin,
yes.
And but funny enough, for example, the scene of the train smashing the car smashing the train, in fact, the reverse, show that in a way maybe Hergé give some criticism of what Belgium were doing in Congo. In a way, they were giving a second-hand train not very in good shape, and finally a car, when you have an accident with the car, the train was falling down, which means that Belgium was not providing Congo with the good engine, you know. So you have different type of example like this, which I would say you can have counter-example. In one of the version of Tintin in Congo, Tintin was giving lessons to the black in the school, you know? Yes. And in the first version, he tried to explain what Belgium is about, you know, in the school. It has been changed afterward in mathematics lessons. Yes. And when he tried to explain Belgium, he's totally unable to explain what Belgium is, because there was a leopard coming into the classroom, you know. And so he say, Belgium is a leopard. You can see that in one panel. And when you know what exactly means a leopard for black people, you can have a counter-example, because leopard means for black people threat. So Belgium is a threat. You see, you have different type of example, of course, which can explain maybe in a different way Tintin in Congo. I don't want to justify the positioning of Hergé, but you have different type of reading. And you have another interesting scene in Tintin in Congo, which is an amazing scene for a comics books, especially at this time of the year, because in Belgium, for example, we have a number of organizations which are called creationism, you know, creationism. In the States you have that as well, saying that in fact the human being have not been, it's against Darwin, okay? It's against Darwinism and the fact that we are coming from the monkey and from the generation of animals. And in the album you have suddenly Tintin killing a monkey, which is horrible, of course. And he put the skin of the monkey, and what he's doing, he tried to recuperate and to have back Snowy, Milou, which has been kidnapped by a monkey, and he climbs into the tree, and starting speaking to the monkey. This scene is quite marvelous because it explains a lot. You know, you have Tintin back into the tree and sharing a discussion with the monkey. So you see, you have different type of reading, and of course, Hergé was saying that he excused himself. He said, "Yes, remember, I was 22 or 23 years old at that time. I was influenced by this abbot, and I'm sure when I was 22 or 21, I wouldn't be able to do the work he has done in a clever way, probably." And he was influenced by his period of time. And if you want to react against this Tintin in Congo,
desculpa, queria só dar a oportunidade a outras pessoas para colocarem alguma pergunta.
You can delete the memory, a lot of literature as well, and great author as well, because they were living in their time.
You have, you know, basically what I understood, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mr. Bordwell's work, Mr. David Bordwell's work. He's a historian of cinema. He highly praises the cinematic aspects of Tintin, particularly its staging of characters and blocking. But one thing that I don't hear very mentioned, and I've started noticing recently, is that the very story of Tintin seems to follow with the cinematic mainstream of the time. I mean, if you watch a Tintin in Congo and in America, you have this series of gags, really, without not really a coherent story, which seem almost lifted from Chaplin or Keaton films, where you have something out of the frame and he goes in and it's surprise and it's funny, but there isn't really a message. And Hergé starting to try to deliver a coherent story after probably the introduction of Captain Haddock and
Yeah, Cigar of the Pharaoh normally.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's any influence there, what films he watched and what stories he liked to tell started evolving.
But yeah, in fact, there are a number of books which try to explain the different sources of Hergé, especially the movie, the literature, or the comics. In terms of movie, I would say there were a lot of speculation, and it's true to say that even in the museum we show different examples of what could have inspired Hergé, what kind of movie would have inspired Hergé. We are thinking of course, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and other comics like this in the 1920s. That's for sure. But never Hergé, to the best of my knowledge, never Hergé mentioned really cinematographic source. That's not really the case for the comics, for example. He mentioned Saint-Augan for Zik et Puce. That's clearly a source which influenced a lot Hergé. It's a previous comic, in fact, Saint-Augan. And Benjamin Rabier, you have this influence in Congo, and you have its influence in Tintin in the Land of the Soviet. And that's clear, loud and clear, that Hergé was influenced by those
but he
two
was
comics.
a really big fan of film, right?
I'm not sure about that because a lot of people were saying, I'm sure he has seen this movie and this movie has influenced his work. For example, there was a movie called Destination Moon, you know. To know exactly to what extent this movie has influenced his work, it's really an analysis and some speculation, but never in all sources we can formally clearly mention that Hergé was influenced by that movie. And I agree with you. I'm not even really sure whether Hergé was going often to the movie theater. He likes apparently movie because he has a technique which clearly refers to the syntax or to the grammatics of movie makers, but no, to be sure that that movie has influenced his work.
Okay, sorry, we have to finish. I'm just asking you to share with us an information we spoke yesterday, because I think that 1 or 2 years before his death, Hergé spoke about Spielberg in an interview.
Yeah. So,
can you remind us what happened?
So basically, in 19, just to tell a short story about Spielberg and Tintin. In fact, according to what has been written in the press, Spielberg was aware of Tintin in the year 1981 when he finished more or less the first Indiana Jones, and Melissa Mathison, the future wife of Harrison Ford, who was the scenarist of E.T., was working in Paris, and she had the chance to read Tintin books. And when the film was released, the first film of Indiana Jones was released, of course, a lot of journalists, critics mention reference of Tintin because there is a lot of similarities between the two worlds. What is important to know is that, in fact, and that has been admitted by Steven Spielberg, saw 9 times the movie called Les Hommes de Rio by De Broca. And De Broca, indirectly, we could say maybe that Spielberg was influenced by Hergé, because De Broca was one of the expected director for the live films I was talking about. He was supposed to direct one of the 2 live films about Tintin. He dropped the idea because he couldn't have enough freedom for his creation, so he dropped the idea. He didn't want to duplicate a Tintin from the album. He wants to be inspired by the value, the world, and to make his own creation. And that's what he did with Jean-Paul Belmondo et Les Hommes de Rio. And you have a number of scenes where clearly you can see the influence or the inspiration coming from the adventures of Tintin. Since Spielberg saw these films 9 times, we can understand where he was indirectly inspired by Tintin, maybe to create the Indiana Jones. But that's life. I mean, we are living not with glasses like we were saying before. We have neighbors, we have colleagues, we have different countries, and we are sharing experience. And if we are clever enough and if we are creative enough, we create our own work, which is, of course, based upon history and upon experience of the others. So in 1981, Spielberg read for the first time the Tintin Adventures. I think it was the 7 Crystal Balls. And he liked a lot it. And Spielberg contacted the publisher, Casterman, to see if it was possible to acquire an option to maybe make an adaptation of the Adventures of Tintin. And that was in 1982 and 1983. I know that Hergé and Steven Spielberg were talking about the phone. They were supposed to meet, and Hergé was delighted, and he wrote, and that has been written at least by some people, that he would be delighted that a person like Steven Spielberg would make the adaptation. For him, it was like the person to do that, and he doesn't want that Steven Spielberg makes, let's say, Hergé film. He wants that Steven Spielberg makes his own films with his own universe, world, and that has been written and been confirmed clearly that Hergé was really happy that a guy like Steven Spielberg would make the film. That's for sure. Unfortunately, when they decide to meet, and it was really close, they were really close to meet, Hergé died in between. And Steven Spielberg came afterwards to visit Fanny. He had a dinner in the houses of Hergé in Brussels with Monsieur Baron, who was the current secretary at that time. And finally, Steven Spielberg acquired an option to make the movie. And funny enough, the first scenario they were working on was Tintin in Congo. And Steven Spielberg was not really happy with that scenario. He was thinking also to Polanski to make a second film, which was a scenario based upon the Scepter photocar. So finally, the option has not been renewed, and it was terminated. I think it was around 1985 or 1987. And in between, there were nothing. So early in the year 2000, we were thinking to make a movie about Tintin. We made different attempts with Claude Berry, among others, Genet, and Jaco van der Maal, who is a Belgian director. He made a really great movie, Toto le Héros. And we were not really happy with this attempt. And finally, Nick Rodwell was thinking about making a film with Warner, because Warner was the producer of Harry Potter. And at that time, and that's my understanding of the fact, I suppose that Spielberg heard about it, and he called us to have a meeting, and that was the starting point of the story we have today. And that was in year 2002.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A literatura de aventura e mistério para jovens em www.misteriojuvenil.com